this is a real treat for me. Lorraine is a like kind of OG GRC. She was involved a few years ago very actively and kind of helped establish a lot of the patterns and things that happen in the you see around you in GRC. And then she got busy, and she's been kind of really leaning into the change maker role. So the conversation I was hoping to have, and we of course can take it any direction that people look to take it, is I'd like to hear a little bit about what Lorraine's been up to and kind of the topic substance of what she's working on. But I think what I'm really most curious about is what she's doing to make change. So she's talking about the, kind of the radical thought of industrial healing in the modern economy, which is I worked a little bit on corporate sustainability while I was at Environmental Defense Fund, and it is not an easy lift, let me say. So she's dived in feet first and has used a lot of interesting techniques, I think, and is just trying a bunch of stuff. So I'd love to hear kind of how she's figuring out what to try and how it's working and how she manages to keep going. So Lorraine, could I maybe just start just giving a little bit of bio, and we'll just take it from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, David, for the invitation. It's a joy to be back, seeing even more familiar faces. Hannah, lovely to see you again, and others who've been on for a few minutes here. So thank you. I will say briefly what I'm doing now and how it contrasts to what I was doing. And those whom I have already met through the GRC, we sort of met in the moment that change was happening. So hopefully this will sort of sound familiar, but might sound new. And then I'm really open, David, to you telling me what you think would be valuable, because I love the idea of just feeding into where I can bring you all benefit. That's just a joy for me. So what I'm doing now is holding my vision front and center as I sleep and as I wake, which is an economy that works in service of life. And by that, I mean all industries, at all scales, in all regions, at all times. The purpose of any economic entity is to serve life. And I want to just characterize that a little bit more so that it's clear what I mean by that, because that could go in a lot of directions, and I'm really open to that. We hear a lot about purpose-led companies or purpose-driven companies. Companies love to promote their purpose. I'll just grab one for handy comparing and contrasting. Google has a purpose that's something like making all of the world's data available to everyone everywhere. That's a really cool purpose. I like data. I like it being available, or accessible might be their word. But the way they make money is predominantly by transactions through advertising. And so while their stated purpose is one thing, the way in which they generate revenue is another. And when I say the purpose of all businesses or economic activity everywhere is to support life, affirm life, enable life to thrive, I mean that by doing business, by generating revenue or whatever economic construct evolves into the future, I am healthier, you are healthier, we are better able to look after one another and be healthy within a biosphere that is thriving. We are very far from that in this moment, and most corporate purposes aren't even contemplating that. So much so that when I bring it up to probably not you all, although I can't say how you reacted inside when you heard that, but often when I raise this to some of my more senior industrial, like mainstream industry friends and peers, they laugh. There's a kind of like economy working in service of life. Well, come on, Lorraine, we got to be realistic. And then there's this kind of flicker of like, oh, wait a second. Why isn't it realistic for the economy to work in service of life? That's a kind of funny thing for it to not do. So we have this bizarre collective belief that it's normal for the economy to not work in service of life. And I hold a vision where that is actually what the economy does. So what I go about doing in my day-to-day, and this has been an evolution over really the last 2 years, beginning formally on Thursday, October 21st, 2021 at about 6 p.m. when I got home from a 5-day run, and emerging in the progression after that, where I have been seeking ways I can contribute to making that vision a reality. And there's sort of three activities that I do. So like if you were to say, what's your job description, Lorraine? I would describe the following. I write, I advise, and I speak. I write about what I've learned about mainstream corporate sustainability and ESG, which is where I have about 20 years experience in the trenches, applying sustainability strategy, stakeholder engagement, transparency, all the, the SDGs, sustainable development goals, all the mainstream corporate sustainability stuff. That is what I did for a living for about 20 years. And I take that knowledge, those methodologies, relationships, awareness, from backstage in multiple industries and sectors in several regions, not everywhere around the world, but pretty deep in North America, Brazil, and Europe. And I speak French, English, Portuguese, some Spanish and German. So I've been very fortunate to go quite backstage at a few different kind of cultural levels. And I take that awareness and I bring it into my writing on both Medium and Substack, trying to boil down specific insights, following the money, following the data, following the disclosures to say, well, what does this mean in relation to our current circumstances and comparing it to what would be, I believe, required for an economy to serve life. I also do some advisory and coaching work, and happy to say more about that. That's both a combination of where we're invited, and at the moment invitations are few and far between into the mainstream corporate sector, or more with private citizens. That's where I get more traction, where people are kind of seeing the exit door of sustainability, not quite too sure how the knob works, and they're calling on me for guidance on how to escape, basically, or how to apply their knowledge and insights in more life-affirming ways. And then speaking. I love public speaking. I used to do a lot of it when I was a mainstream sustainability consultant. And I used to get invited as, either sharing case studies or delivering on behalf of clients and all kinds of fun things like that. And I love it. I pulled the plug officially on that kind of work on Thursday, October 21st, 2021. And then I've been tinkering in my garage, my virtual garage, for a little while. And I'm happy to say more about that. David, I know you know a fair bit, so prompt me with what you think would be useful. In the last couple of years of tinkering in my garage, envisioning, well, how could I contribute? What would that look like? What can I share? What can I do? What can I learn? And just recently, I've sort of opened up my garage and I'm like, I'm coming back out into the real world and doing a bit more proactive sharing like this, and a few other contexts as well. I'm going to pause there because that's a lot. Did I answer your question, David? and do you want to just pepper away?
No, you got us started, I think, and I'm sure we could argue the role of business kind of stuff, which I think would be interesting. But I was going to put that in the parking lot and go back to kind of like the garage. I think the tinkering. And maybe, I don't know, let me start with some of the easy stuff and then let's work backwards to some of the personal regeneration stuff. But, I was just looking at your newest newsletter where you're announcing a face-to-face meeting and a focus on industrial well-being and asking for help. And then one of the things that I think you've done is you did your newsletter in audio. I mean, just talk about that product. Like what you're doing a lot in these things.
Yeah, thanks, David. So yeah, I'll share a little bit about my process because, and I'll be super blunt and candid with you all. And I think I'm generally pretty blunt and candid, possibly to a fault. But I want to just make it clear, like I don't have, there's nobody backing me. There's no sponsor. I don't have a trust fund. I'm on my own. I pay my bills. My newsletter, you need to sign up for it. And I can share this most recent one actively, and then you can get it in your inbox every Friday. And I'll just give the kind of breadcrumbs for how I get to that trail. When I pulled the plug, I was quite a busy consultant. I had as I said, I've been in the field for 20 years. I had worked full-time at Sustainability, which some of you may know is the firm founded by John Elkington in 1996. He's the coiner of the triple bottom line as a term. It's actually become a really good friend. He founded Sustainability, one of the most renowned boutique consultancies in mainstream sustainability. I was the director of the New York office there for a number of years. That's part of how I learned so much about what I know about sustainability. I left there in 2016, January 2016. That's my last kind of full-time employee job ever. And And since then, I've been freelancing. As a freelancer, then John, who now runs a whole different organization, hired me as a consultant, and as did others, the UN Global Compact, lots of the mainstream sustainability folks. I was very busy. I was paid a lot. Like I had a lot of autonomy, a lot of financial freedom. I mean, not millions, but like I earned very well as a single person with a fairly humble lifestyle. And then I pulled the plug on that. And I didn't have a plan for simple things like how I will pay my rent. I didn't overnight say, so this is process, this is all process here. I didn't overnight say, go from getting paid for client work to not getting paid. I was in the middle of 7 projects when I pulled the plug. Some really big projects that take a lot of my time. And then some I was kind of just an advisor, had a little role that kind of straggled. But on that date, Thursday, October 21st, 2021, I said, I no longer say yes to projects. And of the 7 that I was in the middle of, just rough, you can picture like a bit of a bell curve, right? Some were kind of winding down, some were ramping up, etc. Well, by more or less February of 2022, so a few months later, the bulk of those projects were done, the invoices were out the door, and then there was a little bit of straggling into the summer of 2022. So I received my last invoice as a corporate consultant in the summer of 2022. So that's more than a year ago. So it's a little bit like, I picture the like cartoon, jumping off the ledge kind of thing, like, whoo, just kind of sailing. Not sure how income will come in. And then also holding a couple thoughts there. One is this notion of right to comfort, which is quite prevalent in our kind of global North construct of like, well, I went to school and I'm really nice, like I should get paid, right? And I like being comfortable, and like those are worthy thoughts, but they're not valid in terms of why I should get paid, right? And most people, like the global majority, does not have the luxury of saying what I just said. So I don't say that to like beat myself up, but more like I don't have any more right to comfort than any other creature on this planet. So stop whining about what may or may not be comfortable and do something useful. And remember my vision, an economy that works in service of life. How can I serve that vision? So that has led me to imagine that my client is life. And I mean, life's pretty big, right? Like I don't have a corner of the market of like, what is the meaning of life? And the economy is also pretty big. So an economy that works in service of life, like I don't own life and nobody's asking me to design the economy, but I nonetheless see it and I can contribute to it. So I also love writing. I've been writing since forever. And I had been writing a kind of regular, sometimes more or less regular letter to people. And it sort of started as my family and like my aunts. And then they'd be like, I hope you don't mind if I shared this. And they'd share it. And then other people be like, can you put me on your list? And so after a while, this is before I went totally solo. So this is back in 2016. I just started to create a bit of an email list of like, people who said, can you just tell me what's going on in your world? So I started to do that. I meanwhile also created an independent website, blorrainesmith.com. Thank you for sharing that there, David, where I started to just shape a little bit more of what I was thinking, still as a mainstream freelance consultant, but getting a little bit more bold and putting my own face and voice out there. And so when I fully pulled the plug on the corporate thing and was like, well, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do. I'm going to just make space for the thing that I will do to emerge. I realized I needed an accountability mechanism for myself, where if anybody were to ask, like, what are you doing? Like, what have you been up to? I'd be like, oh, this is what I'm doing. So I created this cadence of every Friday answering myself as if someone's looking over my shoulder, but it's me, and saying like, this is what I got up to. And I've experimented with different formats. I was doing it on Medium for a little while, and then I actually pulled it more formally into my newsletter, where people, it's kind of format wise a bit confusing. I can say more about that confusion if it's helpful. But the bottom line is every week, every Friday for over a year now, about a year and a half, I've been saying, this is how I'm spending my time. And then I've evolved that to be a bit less like my own accountability navel gazing, only so interesting even to me, to like, hey, this might be useful. Like I made something, I'd like you to have it, or I found something out, you might find that useful too. Or here's some really cool people doing stuff that I'm like super into and benefiting from. I want you to know about them too. So that has become my Friday newsletter. In this most recent one, thank you, David, for subscribing. And it's free, of course. It just goes to inboxes and probably, well, actually, I can see the stats on it. It's pretty opened because people who get it are like, I'm pretty little, right? I'm not like a household name. So people have found me because they needed to find me for some reason. So I used to work in direct mail marketing back in the mid-90s for World Wildlife Fund. You know, we called it direct mail. Others would call it junk mail. And it was a really good rate of return of 2% of people responded to your campaign. I mean, like 10% was like award winning, literally. And about 70% of my email newsletter recipients open and in some way click. I can't see everything, of course, and I don't always know exactly what's going on in there, but I consider that very encouraging. That's a great piece of feedback to me. Like, people want to see what I have to say. And so in this most recent one, and then I'll pause because I know there's probably better questions that I'm not answering. I'm actually giving my first live talk since 2019. I'm going to Toronto for it's actually my mom's 80th birthday. So my siblings and I are pulling together a birthday party. And I was like, well, sheesh, maybe I can use that as a bit of a homecoming and share some of the most salient things that I've been seeing and doing in my analyses of companies on behalf of life. Pull that together into something useful, put on a talk, and invite people. And I'm hosting it at the Textile Museum as a textile artisan. I used to volunteer there and have done lots of stuff, and they have a beautiful little theater. So I was like, well, let's see, I'll put tickets on sale. I'll also have a donation option in case people are like, I don't want to spend that much money. It's not that big a ticket, but like, no judgment. We're all in different places. The funny thing is, the one person who used the donation option paid more than the ticket price. So I was like, oh, okay, thank you. That wasn't really what it was for, but yeah, and I'm doing that on December 5th in Toronto. So I'm super excited pulling that together and just sharing as best I can in a personal environment with live Q&A what I've been seeing and doing on the path to industrial healing.
Well, you got one question in the chat from Gil. Maybe I'll just hand it to you, Gil. I have a lot more questions, but I'll let you guys talk about it.
Oh, I have a lot more questions too. That's the really tactical one, because I didn't want to interrupt your role. I'm on a very similar role, Lorraine. So good to hear what you're talking about. You say you're publishing to both Medium and Substack. It looks like you're publishing different things to each of them. So I wonder kind of both how you physically manage it, but also how you strategically.
Yeah, I love that question, because it's such a real challenge. Like, unless you have a team, which I don't, well, I do, but she doesn't have opposable thumbs, so she's very limited in what she'll do. That's my cat, Joni. So here's the honest answer.
Doc's going wild on the other end of the screen, by the way.
What's that?
Doc's going wild on the other end of the screen.
I see there. She's actually right above you. They're actually right above you in my
got her there and you.
Yeah, it's great to see. It's actually really fun because Doc's there going like this right on top of your head, Bill. So I love and am honored by the fact that you used the word strategic in your question. I'll be very honest and say, looking at me from the outside in, as much as I am capable, I would not describe my behavior with Medium and Substack as strategic. I would describe it as intuitive, and sometimes that served me quite well. And then I'm continually learning. So I'll describe what I do and where I see gaps that I'm seeking to learn. And I'm really curious what you all see. Medium, and for anybody not familiar, open platform, anyone can publish. You can put things behind a paywall or not. You can put some and not others, etc. I started publishing on Medium years ago, before I even really knew sort of anything. It was just like, I found it. I was reading some people's stuff that I liked. I was like, oh, I can put stuff here too. So I have some very, very early work that came from trips to Ethiopia well, not that early, but 2016, 2017. There wasn't a paywall then. I don't think there was any payment to writers. If there was, I missed it. And I was just kind of tinkering, just sharing some stuff that was a bit beyond my newslettery things that my friends and family were saying, tell us more about that. It was just kind of stretching my public writing wings. I've done a lot of quiet writing. I've written a couple books and plays and things that are very dusty over there. But this was me starting to say, I think I have a voice that might merit airing and allowing for feedback to come towards me. And then as I started to go out on my own and sharpen a bit more, like, what is it I want to say? I started to get more crisp on Medium. And there came a point, summer, I think it was 2022, I published a piece on climate, and it's called something like, Why I Wish I'd Followed My Instincts as a Climate Denier, which I'm being very tongue-in-cheek about corporate climate action, which I now deny because I see so much crap when I follow the money there. And that piece went a little bit viral for me. Viral for me would be like more than 10 people read it in a week. And I got a lot of feedback. In fact, the first week when that came out, this is sincere, it was almost a full-time job to answer feedback, both the comments in the Medium piece itself, as well as private messages that were coming my way on LinkedIn, and email and stuff. Like, it was like, whoa, like I just stood in this stream that I didn't even know was flowing, generally validating, generally saying, holy smokes, you just articulated something that's been in my mind that I haven't been able to say. And that kind of unlocked something for me. That gave me internal permission. Maybe I didn't need it, but I guess I did, to really say what I am here to say. So I got into a bit more of a cadence on Medium. That was also, by the way, it was a little bit before that, I think about 2 months before that, that I began my practice of publicly saying what I'm doing every week. So this is still staying very grounded in Medium, which is quite important to what I did. It's less important now to what I'm doing. So I'll make that line clear. What I was doing was asking my imagined client, which is life and sort of some entity that I could serve in a way that brings real benefit in service of my vision, what I could do, like, not just like, but like, what can I do? What activities can I partake in that will be meaningful, not just keep me busy? And where I landed was conducting these materiality assessments, riffing on mainstream ESG materiality, but putting reality into it. Lots more I could say there, but the point was I decided to do it in public using Google Docs. And the first assessment I did was on Google. So there was this kind of meta thing that I was using the Google to assess the Google in service of life, and practicing a methodology that I was tinkering with. I'm trained in mainstream ESG methodology. I've conducted dozens of mainstream materiality assessments. And those things, by the way, like companies, publicly traded companies and others hiring ESG consultants would pay between $25,000 and $250,000 US for materiality assessments, depending on the number of stakeholder interviews, the degree to which they think they've hired blue chip people to do it, and. So I wasn't asking to be paid at all. I was doing these open source as I'm not going to say as a volunteer, but just somebody, I just believed I could do them and they merited doing. So I began to tinker with these. I did the Google in, I believe it was February 2022. Then I began TD Bank, which is a major Canadian bank. And I've been a customer since I was 7. And I was only choosing companies to analyze that I had not had a commercial relationship, which was quite limiting because I've worked with over 100 large companies. And therefore, I was only looking at their publicly available disclosures. So that was kind of like a cover my ass thing, because it's like, well, your legal counsel signed off on it and published it. I'm just asking some questions about it, And so I did the Google, I did TD Bank, and then I began to work on Danone. And somewhere in that process, I realized I was churning a little bit, like no boss, no key metrics, no invoices, no structure, like primordial soup of self, which is fun and liberating and exciting, but also challenging to keep going in a constructive way and produce anything. So that's when I decided I will use Medium to say every week, I'm doing this. You can care or not, you can pay attention or not, but I'm committed to doing this. And I was also, meanwhile, publishing my newsletter from my website that comes from Lorraine Smith. You don't have to be a member of anything, just put your name in there and you get it. And so I kept doing that, and that was really helpful. And that got me really producing those 4 materiality assessments, because then I went on to do JBS, largest meat company in the world. I was going to do a 5th on Glencore. And then while I was in the midst of Glencore, 2 things happened, and one results in Substack. One was I realized the mental grind of going deep into the disclosures of some of these companies was horrible. Not just because it was a lot of work. Like, I don't mind doing a lot of work. I'm like that relentless thing that does, like, I'm like industrious, to put it mildly. It was really dark what I was finding. So for example, Glencore in their 2020, Glencore is one of the largest mining companies in the world, coal, lithium, copper. They're also a large energy marketer. That's a weird term, but let me give it some context. In their 2022 annual report, one of their executives, I can't remember if it was CEO or CFO, quote, says something like the quantum demand for minerals, for renewables, like they're talking about how like it's a license to print money. They will be mining until somebody tells them to stop ripping those holes in the ground due to the renewable market. And you start to dig into that, and that gets really dark. But there you can have debates. It is, it isn't, there's enough, there's not enough, it's destructive, it's not destructive, we need renewables, blah, blah, blah. But you don't have to go too far into the same report to then read how they explain in the analysis of the revenue, which is in the hundreds of billions of US dollars in that fiscal year, where the additional 37.5 billion US dollars, so just like hold that amount in your mind for a moment, 37.5 billion US dollars. And I don't know about you, but just for fun, like imagine you have that, like what you would do with that, or where you might like that to come from, right? Okay, so 37.5 billion US dollars additional revenue due to the conflict between Russia and the Ukraine, which they explain, these are their words, I'm paraphrasing by my memory, they explain was because of increased energy costs, because they are energy marketers. They own the energy supply. So they made 37.5 billion US dollars because of armed conflict. Going deeper into those and talking in my mind about what needs to serve life was crushing, actually. And I began to realize for my own sanctity, I needed to shift gears into something that would affirm my own life and move forward. So I had a dream in May 2023, not that long ago, that I was in a Substack. At this time, I was trying to read more people's Substacks and realize like, oh, there's this parallel platform. It's different. The business model is different. The approach is different. A lot of the voices are different. And some people are on both. And in my dream, I was the greeter in the material world. And the material world, by the way, I spell real at the end because I kind of tweaked the spelling of materiality to be reality included. And so then I was just like, oh, I think I'm going to start a Substack. And that day, sitting in a cafe just around the corner, I launched the material world. I will give a short ending to this because it's a long answer to what should be a simple question. I didn't want to just repurpose what I'm doing in Medium. Medium feels one way to me. It has a certain aesthetic, a certain vibe with the comments, a certain way in which the reader and writer experience happens. Substack feels different to me, maybe because of the branding and the layout, or maybe because of the voices I've encountered there. I don't know. But I decided to kind of separate and say, when you're in the material world, you are here because you want to experience insights and ideas specific to ESG and corporate sustainability and an economy and service of life. You are testing that reality. You are in it in some way, shape, or form. And my insights and experience and your feedback with me will help in some way. That is the material world. Whereas Medium, I'm a bit more exploratory, conceptual. Sometimes I include poetry about running. It's like a little bit more like a bit of a sandbox, a playground for me. You might see somebody very, very bored reading absolutely everything and comparing. Bless them. We'll notice some crossover and maybe some repetition, but nary a sentence of direct overlap. That was a long answer. Gil, do you want to dig more into those two platforms? Did I did I answer your question?
I do, but it's probably not the best use of everybody here. I mean, I'm challenged, Lorraine, because I'm on, I don't know, what, 3 to 5 social media platforms and about 7 to 10 deep networks of exploration, with collaborative writing, and publish my own newsletter and, sometimes and post on LinkedIn as articles, but not as newsletter. And I guess I don't have as many hours in the day as you do, because I can't imagine how to do all. I'm trying to streamline this.
Yeah.
and have things flow from one to the other and repurpose them so that I'm making good use of my time in the communications part of my life. So there's also room for the advisory and entrepreneurial and other pieces. And I'll just say, just because there's maybe no chance to do this, I love your overall frame because I'm on, I'm in a similar journey. Having been a corporate sustainability consultant as primary identity for a long time, a CSO, and now very much an executive coach and starting a holding company to own and transform companies rather than advise and transform companies. But God, that was too complex. I lost the thought. So how to coordinate all the interaction and communication feels like a real challenge. I built a presence on Medium and sort of abandoned it, and I've been working on Substack, but not in a coordinated way. And I really liked what I think David said about you is that you're YouTubing your writings. My friend Jeremy Sherman does audio of all his writings, so you kind of podcast him without it being a podcast. Anyhow, so that's of interest to me. Oh yeah, so the similar journey is I've recently recovered something they had said way back at the beginning, which is just what you're saying. And the way that I've been articulating it is what might be possible if we did business and did everything else as though we actually belong to the living world.
I love it. Yeah,
that's different language, but exactly the same thing. What if we did
aligned.
With the tip of the hat to Bucky Fuller and Bruno Latour and a few others along the way.
Yeah, I'll quickly comment on that. And then I also see, Dennis, you've got your hand up, and I want to also answer Hannah's question about Patagonia. So I'll try to be succinct, not my superpower. And Gil, that is a beautiful paraphrasing of where I see myself going. Let me just tell you my philosophy to managing my time. Yeah. First of all, I sort of let go of the notion of managing, and I've totally changed my understanding of time. So that frees me up quite a bit. And let me just tell you what I mean by that. I think one of our problems, I don't usually say problems, but here I'm going to say problems, is we have a culture of dominance and control versus surrender and invitation. And then we also have a culture, I'm saying we, and I'm making a lot of assumptions. I come from a culture of dominance and control. And I have to learn to surrender and invite other ways. And then I also come from a culture, let me remember, right. I also come from a culture of scarcity, hoarding, accumulation. Yep. I have to learn how to recognize abundance. It's kind of cliche, but it also feels true. So when I think about how I manage my time, I choose to realize I have as much time as I have. I have this exact same amount of time as everybody else. And I'm not that special, and I'm going to choose. And so like if anyone really, like if a strategic communications manager swooped in and did the inventory of all the things, they'd be like, oh, Christ on a cracker. Like, what are you doing? It's alarming. First of all, brand stuff, and then also consistency. My Medium page, I've had I publish every week. Sometimes I was publishing 3 times a week. Then a few months will go by. Substack, some of my stuff's behind a paywall. Some of it's free. Some of it's in Portuguese. And the podcast, I'm doing more and more in Portuguese. So my Brazilian friends have access. Sometimes it's free. Sometimes I didn't even know it switched to paid. It's I don't know, So I'm doing my best. And what I do, here's the number one way that I surrender into abundance while being a person who's been trained to manage her time due to scarcity. I have an accountability practice, which I use every single day, including weekends, sometimes when it's a real press, mostly Monday to Friday. And there are exceptions, but they are exceptional. Things are beyond the beyond kind of thing. But for the most part, I stay the course on this. A very close friend of mine receives a message from me. I'm on Signal versus WhatsApp or Telegram every morning saying, today I will, : new line, dash. And it's a very short list of things that I say will be done before I go to bed. It's not everything I'm going to do. I don't include things in my calendar, whatever. It's the things that I know if I could keep those things going, and it might be super small, it might be really big, If I could keep those things going, then the job I've assigned myself, which is to be a writer, which involves some research, a coach advisor, which involves finding some people to coach and advise or be available when they come to me, being a speaker, which means being available to speak, having something to say, and getting paid, by the way, to do that as much as I can so I can live well. And I don't mean as much as I can, like lots and lots. I mean, getting paid as much as I can, because I can't do everything for free, because Ms. Non-Opposable Thumbs over there eats pretty well, as do I. So I say, what do I need to do those things? I've been around enough in enough corporate strategic planning environments to know some things are priorities and some things aren't. And I do my darndest, and I need to get better, and I'm always learning, and I'm shedding some things and acquiring others. I do my best to make sure that list of what's on the go for today is sharp and short. And if I really get it done, it will move me forward. Remains to be seen, what kind of, how it all goes. But I've been using that practice for a good couple of years, and it's been a delight and a joy. And I can see day after day what I've gotten done. So I'll maybe just like that's probably more than I can jam in here. But I'm also happy to just brainstorm like offline or share messages, because it is a challenge, by the way. We're solo and there's a lot to do. So I kind of pick my moments, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's more than plenty for now. And I'd love to talk with you offline.
Cool. Thanks, Gil. It's great to see you here. And I feel your pain. Was it Dennis who had his hand up?
It's not.
Yeah,
pain.
but Hannah had a comment way before I raised my hand. So
about Patagonia? Sure, I'll quickly hit that. Do you want to put color commentary to that, Hannah, about Patagonia? It's great to see you, by the way.
You too. Great to see everybody who's here. I've actually known the Chenards a long time. They supported a lot of my early environmental work. And then, as Yvon Chouinard kind of retired, he decided, okay, rather than the mission of Patagonia, like every corporate charter, their mission is to serve their stakeholders. They decided the earth is going to be their stakeholder.
Yeah.
They're giving away $3 billion. It's been tricky trying to access any of that money, and I just made a recent new connection with somebody who can hopefully get me to the right person. So it's like, okay, great, $3 billion. Well, let's get it moving to the places that need it the most. We have so many people asking us for money all the time on the front lines of climate change that are dealing with life and death right now because of climate change, where a few $1,000s could save hundreds of lives. And yet there's billions of dollars that everybody wants to give away and do something good. So anyways, I'm just wondering if you've seen other companies start to follow and really go for it.
Yeah. So here's my honest, candid answer. And I'm the one who put the no mouth emoji in response to your question. Truthfully, I'm not backstage or even front stage enough with Patagonia to speak to the details. So I'll just speak high level, my sense of the thing. My sense of the thing is that it is a distracting gesture that does not address the business model. And so where we give our money is potentially irrelevant or even harmful if where we make our money continues to undermine the ability of life to thrive. I know that Patagonia has been very proactive for many years. Back when I was a mainstream consultant, I remember them offering really great case studies about their work in the supply chain, minimizing toxicity, working towards truly sustainable apparel. But my very strong feeling is that still, to the Bucky Fuller question that I think might have been yours, Gil, like until we really have moved into the paradigm we want, we're in the wrong paradigm. And so there's no good version of it. It's like, being a nicer slave owner. Well, no, like there's no version of owning other people that's acceptable. And I've been toying with this dichotomy lately, and David, you'll have seen it because it's in the newsletter I just published. Or not dichotomy, but like complementarity that is dangerous between help and relief. And let me explain what I mean by that. And I don't say this with judgment, by the way, like I don't know necessarily what to do. And I do a lot of the things that I criticize. So I'm sort of learning, I'm building my own little wings as I'm tumbling off the cliff. I think we need help, and instead we're seeking relief. So we are sensing very problematic things that make us uncomfortable, maybe on just a super individual level, like in the moment, and maybe on a wider collective level. We're uneasy, we're uncomfortable, we're scared, we're angry. We don't feel well, even like physically we're getting sick, or we are already sick. So we seek relief. And that makes sense, because being in pain is painful. And by definition, the vast majority of us, unless we're quite masochistic or in a sabotaging way, will seek relief from that. And I don't say that we shouldn't seek relief. We just shouldn't confuse that with help. Because I believe help is what you get when you're making changes. So we see something's not right. We need to do something there. We need to change it. Well, it's probably that way because like that's the way I got given to do it. I was trained to get a good education, get a job, make as much money as I can, get some stuff, you know? So if I want to change that, if I want to get relief from that, I might actually need some help. And help, you know, it might be heroin. It might be binge watching Netflix. It might be like, I don't know, man, this is all so fucking complicated. Like, this is weird, you know? That's relief. And I respect that. And I need relief myself. Help is new ways of sensing, being, doing, sharing, not sharing. And I don't see the Patagonia model as helping. I see it as relieving. Maybe doling out a bit of money, maybe signaling like maybe we should actually be serving Earth. Help would be, you know what? We had a good run. We learned a lot. We sold a lot of jackets. We're decommissioning. And then once we decommission, which by the way, I needed to decommission for years as a consultant. Any poor soul who was my client can witness. I was agitating from within. I was like, guys, these materiality assessments are kind of wasting time and money. Oh, Lorraine, you're so right. Oh, that's such a good idea. You know what? Maybe we'll do that next cycle. And I kept seeking relief because I didn't want to not get paid $200,000 a year. It's nice, right? I kept seeking relief. Like if I could just talk to people who think it's a good idea, that's such a good idea. You should come and talk about that with our board. But I wasn't changing anything. And so I had to decommission my way of existing to make space for something else. Because as long as it's like, yeah, I know, but you know, okay, I got these deadlines. Then on Monday, I'll do this other way of being. It's like, no, you got to pull all the plugs out, let the whole machine go. And then look around and be like, is there anything useful here? So, you know, who am I to say a whole company needs to decommission? I actually wrote in public on the Material World Substack and in Portuguese and English podcast version that the whole mining industry needs to decommission the vast majority of its assets and then look at what is viable here. And by the way, we have so much stored metal in the buildings that we keep building up that the second we realize we've already pulled it up and we're killing migratory birds as they go by, let's bring it back down and do something useful with it and stop pretending that this is life affirming. It's just, you know, square footage price increasing affirming. So with respect, and I'm sure the decisions were taken, well, I'm not sure, but I imagine those decisions were taken with the best of intentions. My personal view is it's relief, not help. And it's gestural and even posturing and a little bit paternalistic, while the revenue generation continues through the like best of all slave ownership, which is, you know, needs to go. I'm sorry to say that. I wish I was like, yeah, we need more Patagonias, but instead I'm like, oh, oof.
Yeah. Can I add a little bit to that?
Yeah, please, Dennis, over to you because you had your hand up. Go for it.
Yeah, we need to recognize the pathology that's at stake here, that's in action here, right? This is not rational behavior. There's no real reason for what's going on with the incredible economic growth. Obviously, the weapons are insane, right? War is insane, right? But even just the economic growth, the focus on production, on creating more things, the consumerism, as well as the abuse or exploitation. It's all pathology. It's like people who, I would say mostly white people, who just really have this strange desire to feed their egos for some reason. Their egos need to have this hoarding, like you talked about. I think that's what needs healing. Gandhi talked about that. Says, hey, the folks in South Africa, the whites in South Africa, are the ones who just as sick, or if not sicker, than the I don't know if they were slaves or the lower class Black people there, and Asians and everyone else who wasn't white, essentially, is who was oppressed, and probably still is in some ways in South Africa. I mean, this is 1945 he's talking about, his experience that he had probably 20 years before or 30 years before that. And here we're still living this idea. So that's where the healing needs to occur. And these corporations are just manifestations of that sickness.
Yeah. There's lots I want to respond to on that, but did you want to put a specific question on the airwaves? And by the way, I
did. The other question I had, I was just responding to that. How are you measuring your impact? Because I know it's
yeah, sure. So, well, let me just circle back to Gandhi for a moment and then talk about measurement. Yeah, it is a mental construct that a lot of us are locked into, or that we have baked into us, that we have to step out of. I always like to blow Gandhi up a little bit, if I may be so disgusting. And I say this as a hand spinner. Like I've been a hand spinner for most of my life. Wow, yeah. Of course, Gandhi was as well. So a lot of the hand spinning and textile community, we love to lift him up because he insisted that members of his government spun yarn for 30 minutes a day. And so I see a lot of connectivity, as it were, and I am grateful for much of his legacy. I feel like his legacy gets overblown compared to the many other people that were doing things at the time that don't get the recognition. And we then also skim over that he was actually pro-apartheid as long as Indians were on the white side. So I want to just be careful not to overly characterize or simplify very complex things. Like, and I think, Gil, you're getting at that, the phrase mostly white people. These things are sort of bigger than I can smush into this moment, and bigger than I'm probably capable of holding. But what I try to do with that notion broadly, and of course, Dr. Jana, you're probably the best position to properly blow this all up and put it back together. When people talk about decolonizing, I look at, what are we saying, right? Because we're not just talking about skin color or amount of money in the bank or geography or migratory patterns. We're talking about, to me, who is centered and who benefits and who is harmed. And then for me, because my main audience and point of influence is industry, then I ask, and how is or isn't industry involving those who are centered in decision-making? Because that is for me, what I see within industry, that is a far bigger question than, do we have the right array of skin colors, or did we, get the stakeholder surveys on the ground at the mine site before we dug the hole? Because at the moment, a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts try to address the kind of mostly white people issue, but it's very codified and bypasses fundamental things like who is centered, who is harmed, who is benefiting, and who is participating in the decisions. And if I were to just stand way back and let life run the show, there's no way she would make 99 out of 100 of the decisions that industry is making now, because they're not in service of those who are actually most harmed or have the potential to benefit. So that's my probably slightly swishy-tailed comment about Gandhi and race for the moment. How do I measure my impact? I don't see any. I think if I have any impact, well, here's my desired impact. Here's what I would like to be true when I die. Actually, I'd like it to be true within 5 years, and I hope I don't die within 5 years. So I would like that at least 5 senior industry decision makers, and by decision makers, I mean they move billions, possibly trillions of dollars, and hundreds of thousands of jobs, that those 5 individuals, probably men, possibly in at least a couple of them in Brazil, have shifted their own worldview from laughing or not even holding the idea ever, it doesn't even come near them, of the economy works in service of life, to noticing that is a laudable, I'm goosebumping all the way down my right side as I say this, laudable, desirable, honorable worldview that they have a role to contribute to. So when I die, that will have happened. I may never know that it's true. So my impact measurements are perhaps beyond my ken, or like real impact, like, okay, let's say, play it out, Lorraine, all 5 of these magical humans moving lots of money and people around go from that's weird to that's true and that's me and that's what I'm going to do. Then what? Well, there's a lot of things that I can't even imagine because I don't know what they do and where they are and how they're moving their money. But some things change, big things change about what they even want to do with their money. Maybe they take their hands off the wheels, right? Maybe they give it up to life or their grandchildren or the river, and they really do it like Patagonia style plus, and they make it true. And then the knock-on effect, which I believe we're looking at several generations for the impact to even be measurable, and then to play out. So yeah, I don't really measure my impact.
Yeah. So how do you stay on track?
Well, I have that daily accountability with my friend.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. How do you know you're going in the right direction?
Oh, well, a lot of times I don't.
How are you doing it?
Yeah, a lot of times I don't. But I ask myself quite a bit, like, what do I mean by an economy that works in service of life? Why am I doing this and not that? And what do I think would work? So I do my best to stay accountable. I have mentors and guides and sparky feedback givers. And this feels tied to another question. Let me ask a slightly different question, which may or may not help you, Dennis, but I'm going to answer anyway, which is how do I make money? Because I think that's actually important to staying on track. Currently, I run a deficit and I am not financially viable. So if I were to just grab a core sample of like the last 3 weeks and say that's a projection for what's coming for the next 3 years, I'd have to have a pretty good plan B. I have a plan B and a plan C. So my plan B is I will waitress. There's lots of restaurants hiring and whatnot, so I'll get a wage job. I know we're recording, so hold me to this if I have to get to plan C. Long ago, I worked as a nude model in the fine arts department in school. I'll go back to that. There's several universities here with fine arts departments. You get paid. So I think I could like make ends meet if I needed to. I'd rather not have to do that. So how do I stay on track so that I don't have to do that and I'm living in service of my vision? I gather feedback. I'm like, does this bring you benefit? Can you take this and run with it? What would make this insight more useful for either you to take inside the hive and inoculate it with this notion that we need to decommission and compost what's not working, truly amplify what enables intergenerational massive shift? And or is there something else I could be doing with that? Because taking it into the hive, it's too allergic. What else? Who else? When else? Where else? And then like just expanding myself towards that and following my intuition as best as I'm able. And by the way, Dennis, if you're like, well, that's not right to me, I think you could do this, like I'm listening. If you've got input about what else you think I could be doing to be.
Oh, awesome answer. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know people might have to run. David, am I okay to just keep going and people who can stay and want to ask can stay and ask?
Yeah, I mean, I booked the time a little extra 15 minutes there. I don't know if I squeezed in thinking that we might want to talk more, but we certainly understand that people have to leave on the hour.
Cool.
I was going to stick around though, if it's okay with you.
Yep, it's good for me. So I see questions from Myrna and Carrie. So why don't I ask each of you to ask your questions and I'll see if I can do a little bundling. So go ahead, please, Myrna.
Hi, it's so great to meet you. Thank you for being here. I feel angry, upset, disappointed, and sad that those of us who are here, and I know, I'll speak for myself, but I know some of my colleagues feel similarly. Like we're on the leading edge of what feels like the most important work in the world, right? Being in service to life, trying to help make a difference toward not just ameliorating, but truly healing and helping transform the status quo in service to life. Like, why are we struggling and looking at waitress jobs and substitute teaching and like having this big trouble making ends meet financially in this time? So it's just like frustrating and disappointing. So nice to meet you. I hope we continue the conversation more, and that's me. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. I've got lots of thoughts on that. And as Oh, did Carrie have to drop? No, sorry, it was Marna who's going to ask.
Yeah.
Very still here.
Cool.
I'm here. I just I thought maybe I don't need to ask my question.
And sorry, Windows just jumped around. It was Marna who just asked and hand is still up. Please go ahead, Carrie, and it's lovely to see you.
Hi, I was just going to say, I actually can hold my question for another time.
Okay. Well, I will answer that question from Marna as best I can. And by doing that, I'm going to drop in a Medium link here, which is an article I wrote a little while ago that I wrote for myself, but it turns out it's handy for others, which is how to stay motivated when everything is bonkers. Because I kind of have a model for how to stay motivated when everything is bonkers. And so that's there, and I just put the free link so you can go behind the paywall if you're not a Medium member. But let me just offer maybe a challenge respectfully to your comments, Marna, because I feel you. And I want to just, and I don't know you actually, so I don't know, anything about like where you are, your lifestyle, anything like that. So this isn't at all a personal comment, but more of a kind of broad comment in response to this sentiment, which I can really relate to. The first is, I don't know that I really am on the cutting edge of anything. I'm actually learning so much from so many people who were way ahead of me all along. So I think of folks like, I don't know if you're familiar with the Possible Futures crew, headed by a few folks who've been involved, and I think some might still be involved with the GRC. Happy to put a link in there. And they're looking at their Introduction to Decolonial Sustainability course, which I'm a guest coach in. And I actually do receive some income from doing that coaching, which is amazing. I also really just learn a ton. And I've learned so much from doing that work in collaboration with them that it's become really obvious to me that although I'd like to think I'm kind of special and I'm kind of doing interesting things, the fact is, I'm not really. And in fact, I've benefited so much from the things I claim to be trying to fix that I got to be pretty careful about being angry about that. So when I am, which I sometimes am, by the way, so my kryptonite where I'm just like, ugh, is when I bump up against, typically, thanks David for putting the link there. I struggle when I'm confronted usually by more senior men who shut down this conversation, like who have no tolerance for it. And just immediately it becomes like not a joke. It's like, it's not even a conversation. It just is, it doesn't exist. I become so angry and frustrated. And this is something I'm really working on noticing in myself. Like, what is that anger? First of all, because it's not helpful. Like anger is rarely, there are times, but not in those instances, is it useful. It does not help me do what I'm here to do. And I sure don't feel good. I feel all toxic and yucky. So in that sense, just in terms of self-serving, how can I really dissolve that anger into something else or just let it go? And what I often find when I've gone inward on that is that's actually my own stuff, not believing in what I'm doing. It's my own training saying like, yeah, like what would the economy look like? Like I have a lot of days where I live in a city, I live in Montreal, I look out the window and there's asphalt and roads and things. And I don't think there should be asphalt. Like, I don't get why we have streets. They're so toxic and they cause floods. Like people talk about climate change causing flooding. Here, what causes flooding is asphalt. Like we just flow water in all the places water isn't meant to be. There's so many other reasons why asphalt is stupid that I just don't understand why we don't have orchards that we're all tending. And, and then every now and then I am that senior industrial male who's like, good God, what are you even saying? That's beyond stupid. Now I can duke it out, right? I can be like, well, it's not actually beyond stupid. It's actually within stupid. But the anger, yeah, I guess I'll just say like, take a good look at that anger and ask yourself why it's useful. Like, are you that special? Are you on the cutting edge? Are you doing what needs to be done? Is there some other way you could do it that isn't like sounding self-righteous, but that is just in fact right for you in this moment, that puts you in right relationship with the people and places where you are? And that's going to look really different to everyone. And then let that anger bloom into whatever it needs to be. And it may be really genuinely grounded in horrible shit, because there's a lot of horrible shit around. And so that's where I get to, okay, because there is a lot of horrible shit around, but I'm super motivated to do what I'm here to do. And that's where I kind of created I noticed I had a framework. I was like living in a framework of, I'll give it the 3 quick hits, and it's written up much more in detail in that article. As much as I can, I live in the paradigm that I want to be in. Kind of like taking Bucky Fuller, or frankly, people who've been living this way forever, and we just ignored them, trampled them, killed them, stole their land, etc. Noticing, and I don't mean like, because Indigenous people are so free and great. I mean, like, notice what actually works, what is right relationship, what actually centers and doesn't harm and includes benefit for the true decision makers. What does that look like? Like, go be that, or practice being that. Notice where it happens, like really bring myself into the paradigm I want. And the easy place to say, well, how would you do that, is like the work I'm doing. Like, I didn't want to be in this crazy treadmill of freelancing to do bullshit. Like, oh, well, I'll stop doing that then, right? And there's lots of other ways I could describe it. The second really important motivator for me, this one is key, and I get a lot of resistance on this, so resist if you must, but it's working for me. I actively seek out complexity and I hold it. I'm allergic to polarization. When somebody tells me it's for sure this, I'm like, then it might also be that, on everything from like climate change is real. I'll go to the talk to me deniers. Like, why do you feel that? Because there is rich knowledge and wisdom in there. Vaccination and COVID stance, lockdown good, lockdown bad. Talk to me. What are you feeling? What are you sensing? What are you seeing? And oh, you're in Sao Paulo and you're in Sydney, Nova Scotia. You're different. Like, give me your multiple parallel, interconnected, dichotomous truths. Of course, I flinch sometimes because I strongly disagree with some things, or I strongly agree with other things, but I nonetheless, to stay motivated, try to just, like, as much as I can, stay outside of that and just hold all this complexity and love it and embrace it. And as soon as I feel polarizing, I'm like, oh, there's something good there. Don't get pulled in, just like feel it. It's very empowering when you can depolarize. And whether you verbalize it or not, you decide when it's safe and when it's not so cool. I learned that one the hard way, again and again. And then the third thing is, I try to imitate people, and by people, I don't always mean humans, that are just way better at me on stuff. So I try to learn from those who are modeling ways, behaviors, techniques, ideas that really kind of inform me, and then figure out, what can I copy? Like, just plain old, like, cut and paste. So an example that I love, and by the way, like, I often can't copy and paste it, but I try. Like, I'm like, what would that feel like? So for example, migratory birds. And I live on a flyway. They all kind of just finished going by. And like, they're amazing. First of all, just obvious things, like they go really far on their own steam. And as a distance runner, I'm super inspired by that. But even bigger, and I think even more into what you're getting at here, Marna, I'm projecting. I can't really know what's inside the mind of the black-crowned night heron, but I believe on some level the words I'm using might be true, which is they don't know where they're going. Like, especially the ones just born this spring. They're going on a multi-day, multi-thousand kilometer journey to a completely other place, passing through many other completely other places. They've never been there. They don't know the route. They don't have a map. And they're going. And they're not like staying at the shore going, Mom, Dad, forget it. Like, I'm not even putting my coat on, forget it. Like, maybe there's resistance, but they go. And they come back again the next year. And they go again. And a lot of them smash into tall buildings that are LEED certified, but many of them make it. And so I look at that and I'm like, aside from feeling awe, which I really feel like, I'm just, again, wearing a coat of goosebumps right now. Kind of funny that geese are a bird. But aside from the awe, which is a nice feeling, I learned that there's a whole unit of, or layer of life out there that just gets up and goes on its journey without needing a map. And yeah, I can probably do that too. To the impact measurement question, like, my impact measurement is right up there with the black crowned night heron. Like, what's their impact measurement? Maybe they have one actually, and we're just like too kind of rudimentary to grasp how to read it. But I trust that I've got, well, I try to imitate them. Anyway, intuition. Yeah, exactly. I feel like it's only recently that I've been able to say this out loud, although I realize I've known it all along, ironically, meta, that our most powerful technology is intuition. And I find it curious. I'll stay curious. I could get really angry. And I do feel that by the way, I feel like I spoke like a little personally and maybe out of turn. Please know it comes from love and it's mostly turned at myself, because I feel like most of my life has been navigating the suppression of intuition, my own or others. And I feel like industry is a pretty powerful, not all industry, of course, but a lot of what industry does is suppress our intuition and then let the symptoms of that emerge and then solve for it, so that we are not well and we need relief from that suppressed intuitive way of being well, which we're all born with. It's quite beautiful. Yeah, did I miss any questions or other things? I'm not so good at scanning the chat as I'm soliloquizing, so please steer me straight if I've missed anything or if others want to weigh in.
Well, I'm stunned. I mean, that was beautiful. I mean, that's a mic drop moment right there. Right? Thank you. Beautiful.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate all your feedback. Yeah, and it's really neat to see many of your wonderful faces. And by the way, I'm genuine when I say I welcome feedback. I'm a bit slow. Gil was here asking how I manage. The truth is I don't. Like, there's so many channels where I'm like, oh my God, I didn't see that message. And it was a really nice one. But at the same time, sometimes, we get in a rhythm or something flows really well with a conversation that's underway, etc. So I welcome feedback. I think David put my website there, blorrainesmith.com. You can sign up to my newsletter. It comes out every Friday. And I really do try to share what I'm learning and seeing and doing on the path towards industrial healing. I feel like this is a collective healing effort. By the way, I say industrial healing on two levels. I say it like, we talk about like, oh, that's an industrial sized pot of soup. So the healing that's going to happen is industrial sized, like it's a big healing. But I also mean it because it's industry that is healing. We are, of course, industry. Industry doesn't exist without us. So I'm on a path towards industrial healing. I'm learning as I go. Feel free to join me. And then in my Substack, The Material World, if diving into insights around ESG and what is required to serve life is your bag, please join me there. Medium, I'm there as well, B. Lorraine Smith on Medium. And if you know anyone who wants their head given a shake in these ways on a regular basis, I love coaching. And if you know any organizations looking for a speaker to really get people hopping, I really enjoy sharing what I'm learning as I go. So happy to keep in touch.
Lorraine, thank you so much.
Thanks for the invitation, David. It's great to see you. Great to re-see faces and look forward to staying connected and be well. And thanks to the GRC. You guys are just such a cool collective. I'm so glad. I love how you introduced me as one of the OG. That does my heart good. And I'm glad to see that the seeds are sown and the permaculture-esque multi-level crops are thriving. So it's awesome. Thank you. Shall we sign off?
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Yeah. Thank you. You guys too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good stuff. Bye for now. Take good care.